The rain fell in sheets, heavy and relentless, the kind that soaks through every layer and leaves even your soul shivering. Beneath the pale glow of the city's street lamps, a crowd had formed outside the grand rotunda of the Baltimore Arts Society, a gathering of elegant people in black suits and satin gowns, laughing under umbrellas and raising champagne flutes beneath white canopies. But amid the music and the murmur of privilege, something far less elegant was unfolding. John Kennedy stood still as a statue at the foot of the stone staircase, jaw clenched, hands balled into fists so tight his knuckles were bone white. His eyes, usually calm and patient, were fixed on his wife, Elena, who stood at the top of the stairs, blinking in disbelief as an older woman, sharp-eyed and cruel, lipped tore into her in front of at least 100 strangers. You dared submit that into the gallery, its derivative, laughable. My dear, your colors clash like arguments at a funeral. Laughter. Not all of it cruel, but cruel enough. John felt it in his chest like a punch. Elena didn't speak. Her canvas, a painting of their daughter who had died 3 years earlier, still hung behind her, distorted in the rain, spotlighted on the marble wall. She had painted it in grief, in fire, in truth, and now she was being ripped apart. No one moved to stop the woman, an influential critic named Muriel Laroche, a woman who had funded half the building with her foundation money. No one dared cross her, except John. He didn't say a word, not yet. He just walked slowly, deliberately, up the steps. The rain didn't touch him anymore. The crowd parted for him, uncertain. Elena saw him coming, her lips trembling. He reached her and gently took her hand, wet, cold, shaking, and for a long moment he simply held it. And then he turned to the crowd. But before we get to what John said, to what left every person in that courtyard breathless and still, you have to understand the weight he carried. You have to know who he was, and why Elena's humiliation broke something sacred inside him. John Kennedy wasn't born into art or elegance. He was born in a 2-bedroom house in southeast Ohio, where his father worked the mines and his mother worked night shifts at the diner. Life was quiet, hard, and honest. He didn't dream big. He dreamed steady of being a good man, of building something that wouldn't fall apart. He joined the Navy at 18, where he learned discipline and patience. He was a quiet man, measured, the kind who observed more than he spoke. But when he did speak, people listened. His voice didn't rise often, but when it did, it was like steel bending. He became a firefighter after the Navy, a job that matched his instinct to protect others, and it was in that line of work that he met Elena. She had been volunteering at a youth center near the station, teaching art to kids who had never seen a paintbrush up close. She was sunlight, laughing, passionate, chaotic in the most beautiful way. Where John was silent, she was loud. Where he was firm, she was soft and curious and always seeking. They balanced each other like two sides of a breath. They married within a year, and when their daughter, Leela, was born, John thought life couldn't get better. But it did until it didn't. Leela died just before her 6th birthday, an undiagnosed heart condition. One moment she was coloring with Elena on the living room floor, the next she collapsed. John tried to revive her. He was trained, he knew what to do, but some things you can't fight, no matter how brave or strong you are. They buried her in a field of lilies. After that, Elena disappeared, not physically, but emotionally. She barely spoke, didn't eat, didn't sleep. She stopped painting. John, hurting in his own quiet way, didn't know how to reach her. He kept going to work, kept making coffee, kept the house clean, but it was all colorless, until one morning, 6 months later, she showed him a painting. It was Leela, not a literal portrait, but something more raw. Her wild curls were made of fire, her eyes two torn windows. The whole piece was jagged and confusing and beautiful and aching. It was their grief made visible. Elena painted every day after that. She filled canvas after canvas with her sorrow and rage and love. And John, though he never claimed to understand the art world, supported her completely. He built her a studio in the garage, took extra shifts so she could stay home and create, encouraged her to submit her work, even when she said she wasn't good enough. And that night in Baltimore, that art gala, the first time her painting had been accepted into a major exhibit, was supposed to be a turning point. But instead, she stood there, publicly dismantled, and John, having watched her climb back from a grief that nearly consumed her, wasn't going to let anyone tear her down. So he turned to the critic, Myril, and with a voice that cut through the rain and laughter and judgment, he spoke. "I've run into burning buildings," he said, voice calm but firm. "I've pulled people out who thought they were about to die. I've held fathers who just lost their kids and told them it would be okay, even when it wasn't. But I've never seen anyone braver than this woman." The crowd went still. "She painted that for our daughter," he said, nodding toward the artwork. "Not for you, not for money, not for praise, for the little girl we lost. She fought her way out of grief by making something beautiful. You might not like it, that's fine, but don't you dare humiliate her for being vulnerable in a world that would rather see her quiet." Myril opened her mouth but couldn't speak. John wasn't done. "You see a painting. I see the strength it took for her to even stand here. I see every sleepless night, every time she wanted to give up, every tear that fell on that canvas. So no, I won't let you shame her, not tonight." There was a long silence, and then something incredible happened. A woman stepped forward from the crowd, a young artist, tears in her eyes. "That painting reminded me of my brother," she said. "He died last year. It was the first time I've felt seen." Others followed. A man with a cane, a mother clutching a child. Slowly, the mood changed. The crowd shifted, not just physically, but emotionally. There was no applause, just quiet understanding, compassion. Myril backed away, her power suddenly hollow. John turned to Elena, brushed a wet strand of hair from her cheek. She was crying, not from shame this time, but from something softer. Healing. She gripped his hand and nodded. Later that night, after the crowd had dispersed and the champagne had gone flat, they sat in silence on the gallery steps. Just the two of them, beneath the drumming rain. "I didn't need you to save me," Elena whispered. "I know," John replied, "but I needed to remind them who you are." And she smiled. In the weeks that followed, the story of what happened spread online. A cell phone video someone had taken of John's speech went viral. Elena's painting sold, then another. And another, but more importantly, she started teaching again, hosting grief workshops, helping others paint their way back from the darkness. And John, he stayed the same, quiet, steady, the man who doesn't speak often, but when he does, the world listens. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is simply stand beside someone they love and say, "You're not alone." And that was what left everyone speechless. Life doesn't always give us heroes in capes. Sometimes it gives us firefighters in wetsuits, holding their wife's hand in the rain. And if you take one thing from their story, let it be this: love is not loud, love is not showy, love is showing up. Especially when it's hard.